Hello and welcome back to another episode of Taking Back Saturday, a Happy Buyers Club podcast where we break down the real estate market each and every Friday and help home buyers build confidence, follow a process and hopefully buy really happy. I'm your host, as always, Chayse Jones, and joining me, as he does each and every week and every single day, my mate, Sam Hunter. How are you, Sam?
I think buy really happy is a very good change to the intro.
Huge. Mate,
Yeah.
This is going to take us to new
heights. Yeah, felt right.
Excellent. Today we're going to speak about, I'm not going to call it a trap, but certainly something that I think a lot of buyers fall into, which is seeing a listing, landing on realestate.com and falling in love with it based on the photos.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it's meant to do. It's marketing. It's marketing 101. Stage a house and, present it in its absolute best light. And it might sort of mask over some of the other, maybe more important things.
Yeah.
That, we're going to sort of give you some tips and tricks as to how to maybe navigate through that sort of stuff. Number one. Okay. And I think this is something that we've spoken about, at length. It's probably one of the topics in your book. Floor plans first.
Yeah.
Because it is the photo that gets hidden often, and you see 20 new photos on a new listing, and it's often photo number 20, when really, I think it should be the first photo that people look at.
Yeah. I think realestate.com has picked up on this, and they give you a floor plan button now, so you can sort of open the photos up and skip straight to it. The hot tip that we give to all buyers is when you do open that up, just swipe right and you go to the last photo, which is invariably the floor plan. It is the photo that tells the best story, or sometimes the worst story.
It's the true story.
Yeah, exactly right. And it shows you a house for exactly what it is, but it also can speak to its potential as well. It's a hell of a lot easier to renovate and extend a house that has a pretty functional floor plan already, where everything kind of makes sense, versus a house where everything's a little disjointed, and practicalities like plumbing are all over the shop. And it just means that your decisions will add up cost-wise very quickly, or family life will feel really disjointed very quickly as and when you move in. So, yeah, it's what do we say in the book? Make floor plans sexy again.
Yeah.
Topical comment at the moment. I think they're just underrated, and they're such a useful way of determining if that property is even worth going to have a look at.
Definitely. And I think that's what this whole episode is about, is about making the best use of people's time.
Yeah.
Because, falling in love with beautiful photos is one thing, but if the house is truly not functional, both for the now, but also for future-proofing that house, then why waste the time getting out there and having a look at it?
Yeah.
So, everyone wants the house that flows. Everyone wants that feeling of walking in and being like, wow, look at how easy our life could be lived here. But it's not always the case. So sometimes you've got to look maybe for its potential as well as what it is in the here and now. I went to a place in Ferny Hills on the weekend, and it was an absolute dog's breakfast in terms of a floor plan. It was like a patchwork quilt. Like, even the flooring, it changed like 5 times on the lower level.
It's like one of those dodgy like mirror rooms when you go to the Echo and you're trying to just make your way through, and you're like, what do I do?
Help. I was like sending out a flare, like I couldn't find my way back out of the place. But, what I will speak to at this time as well is with floor plan, and on the floor plan picture is often the aspect.
Yep.
Or the orientation of the house, and light is such a big part of floor plans and layouts of homes. And Sam's excellent at this. Sam has a very good sense for natural light, where light comes into a home, how it's used in certain spaces. I walk around with my Apple Watch like I'm freaking Buzz Lightyear, trying to work out like, okay, that's north, all right, here we go. But again, it is important, because this place I went to had light in all the wrong places. There were some rooms in that house, like the study, that were just bathed in light. And it was like, oh, how incredible is this? The kitchen was like a dungeon, very dark, fully covered in. And, for the most part, that is such a key part of the home. You spend so much time there. You want it to be somewhere where, visibility to the backyard's good, where you've got natural light that pours into it. So aspect is something that I think people should be really conscious of. And, as our light aspect expert, how do you sort of determine what is best position, best, orientation of a home?
Yeah. I think the only reason why I'm maybe so conscious of it is because I spent 7 years living in the UK, and so literally the first time I ever like showed a property in London, the buyer was like, "How good is this southerly aspect?" And my head, being an idiot, was like, "Why would you want to face south? You
Oh,
want
the
to be
world's upside down, my
you want to
friend.
face north. What are you talking about?" And then I realized that actually in the northern hemisphere, the light comes from the south. Idiot. From that moment on, I was like, wow, this is actually really important in a environment that doesn't get a great deal of
Mm.
light. You want to maximize it.
Well, for them, it's warmth.
For sure. And actually, there's no such thing as like eaves in the UK because they want to just get as much natural light into the house as possible because it is just a really efficient way of heating and cooling when necessary. Um, in Brisbane, we're pretty fortunate in that it's sunny a lot of the time. So could you live with a southern aspect? Potentially pretty cold in July, particularly in the week that we've all just experienced where it's been unseasonably cold, even for a Brisbane winter. But it does make a massive difference to your heating and your cooling if you can understand where your light's coming from, where it's going to affect you. Like the Western sun, we all grew up and it was like your parents would be like, "Oh, you can't be out in the Western sun; it's too bloody hot." It is stinking hot, but it's only for about 2 hours a day, and then actually, even in the height of summer, it's manageable. So you've just got to recognize that if you're buying a house with a Western aspect or even a absolute due north aspect, you've got to make sure that your floor plan lets the light in when you want it and keeps it out when you don't. Or you're going to do your reno to maximize that as well. As somebody who just looks at floor plans week after week when we're thinking about building our own new place, it's like, how do we orient our place really well? The back of our block faces almost like southwest, so we're actually going to build a little reverse house that opens it up to the north, and the front yard will become the backyard, if that makes sense, because we want to maximize what that looks like. And I think anybody, again, when you see your dream house get listed, and it's that moment, right? You get your realestate.com alert, or you get an email from an agent, whether it's on or off market, whatever it is, and you see that first photo, and you're like, "Holy shit, I want
It's
to
the
live."
one.
Yeah, I want to live there. And you get a little bit carried away. When can you see whatever it is? And you've got to just kind of rein it in and have that checklist, have that notes app open up, and it's like, cool, let's look at the floor plan. Let's look at that aspect. Does it still tick all our boxes? Will we have to do something to it? Can we live with the Western sun for 2.5 hours a day when it does get pretty hot? What a roller shades or anything like that cost? Because that's pretty much all you need. But it's just a consideration. I think a lot of people, particularly first home buyers, because they've not done it before, don't take into account until they move in, worst case. And they're like, wow, it is hot in here. Or wow, it's freezing cold because it doesn't get any light for 3 or 4 months a year. Versus those people who are like, okay, I know what I'm in for. And it's something that I'm willing to accept, or it's something that I'm not. Same thing again, if you are buying that starter home and you want to extend it, whether it's kitchen, living area, another bedroom, whatever it might be, is the floor plan that exists, aspect aside, is that conducive to doing the work that you want to do for a reasonable price? Or are you effectively building another house on top of
Yeah,
one?
gluing them together.
For sure. And like you can do that 100%. Like we've got a mate that's built like a glass breezeway and then an entire almost like tiny home up the fence for one of his places. But that was an expensive outlay
Definitely.
because the floor plan and the house didn't suit what he decided that he wanted to do after he bought it. So, yeah, what questions can you ask the moment you see the pretty pictures that'll set you up to ideally make a better decision?
For sure. And like these are things that you can do at home with the telly on, the footies on, whatever it may be. And it is just slowing down. Slow down a little bit, actually identify like where are the bathrooms? I don't mean to bash up on this poor place at Ferny Hills, but I completely forgot about the fact that upstairs it had a main bathroom that was split into 3 rooms.
Yeah.
There was a bath and a basin in one room. There was a shower in another room, and then the toilet in a third room. And they're all just like little, branches off the end of the hallway. So you actually got the furthest point away from all the bedrooms, and then had the master split into 3 rooms. Absolutely wild. Anyway, hope those cells do well. But again, it's looking at that, being like, okay, how does that work? How does that work for me? And my kids, whatever it may be, and how could I change that so that potential challenge isn't a challenge for me when I'm the seller. It's all really important things to sort of identify. And another one is dimensions or size. floor plans can be deceptive. They stretch and pull the sort of floor plan to make it look how they want it to look, and then you got to check the actual dimensions though as to is that room actually tiny?
Is it that 3 by 3.5, or have they measured the room from inside the built-in wardrobe
Yeah.
to the wall? Which actually most people who do a marketing floor plan, if you go and get a registered valuer to measure your house, they will measure the habitable space in that property.
Mhm.
Stairwell is not habitable space.
Garage is not.
A built-in wardrobe, a garage is not habitable space. Although we've lived in garages,
Yeah.
so maybe it is. So a valuer will measure a house differently to somebody who is doing the floor plan while they're taking beautiful marketing photos, and they will measure that house as big as it possibly can be. So if it says it's a 250 square meter house, take it with a grain of salt. It probably is maybe 230 square meters. Have a look on the floor plan. As you said, where are the arrows marking? Is it inside the built-in or is it outside the built-in? Because that will give you a sense for what that room is actually like. And then you can make a decision about going and seeing it, right? And then again, hot tip, take tape measure.
And take the tape measure out of your house before you leave, where you're currently living. Check out what your current spaces feel like, and you're like, okay, great. Well, my current living room is 6 meters by 3 meters.
Yeah,
I think that's suitable. That's fine. If we can get that again, that'd be great, and then replicate that.
It's the townhouse to house situation, right? We've just bought a property for a client who lived in a townhouse, are selling that and moving into a house, and I would say 50% of the properties that we saw were smaller than the townhouse that they had, because they were post-war houses. They had 3 by 3 bedrooms, and they had people just didn't live then the way that we live now.
We're living like kings.
We are, and that's part of the reason that houses are super expensive and there's an affordability crisis. Bring back tiny homes or something in the middle.
Yeah, so that's a topic. I listened to a podcast about that recently. Floor plans aside, we're still, the listings popped up or coming soon. We're not going to be blown away by the photos just yet because we've checked the floor plan. Scrolling down a little bit, next one's map.
Yep.
Great free tool.
Yeah.
Where is it for starters? We're looking for its location with regards to train lines, main roads, general retail, whether it's a car park for a pharmacy that's out the back or whatever it may be. You want to be conscious of where it is located, and then there's a little button there to change it to street view. And I love this because it can be 9 o'clock at night while the telly's on, and you could walk the street. You can walk the street. Yes, I know the photos aren't. It's on a live stream from out the front of the house, and those photos might be from a few years ago. But their ability to see the house, spin around. What does it look like when you're looking out your front door? What do your neighbours look like? Walk down the street. It's just a fantastic tool to almost preview the neighbourhood.
Yeah, you might see different cars when you get there for the open home, but a small percentage of a street changes every year, right? So if there's a concerning neighbour, that's a very political way of putting that, you'll probably see it in the street view, right? If it's got a beautiful streetscape and everyone looks after each other and there's a community library and all that sort of stuff, you'll probably see it in the street view. And that will help you figure out what questions to ask the agent when you do go, or it will build confidence that it's not just the photos that you love about it. And actually it looks like it's a street where you'd be happy for your kids to grow up in, or you'd be happy to go and live in, or you'd be happy to invest in. So it is just, again, you sort of said slow down, speed up. It is just about taking the time to look beyond what's been so beautifully curated by the marketing agent. Just try and see what else is the realities that aren't probably written or shown in that listing.
And that's the thing. Like, it's not up to the agent to potentially put the warts and all on the ad.
For sure. Coke doesn't tell you that it rots your teeth, right? It just tells you that it tastes really good.
High fructose corn syrup. Yeah. It's like, oh, that doesn't sound very sexy.
No.
That just sounds weird.
I don't even know what Coke's slogan is, but I'm sure it's like, drink this, it tastes good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing. Buy this house, it looks good. That is effectively what every real estate agent will say, and what every real estate agent ad is like, this is the perfect house for you, and here's why. And it will not tell you why potentially it isn't.
Yeah. But obviously on that listing, like we said, like they've got a link there to the floor plan. They've got a link there to the map and the street view. So those are all tools that are there at your disposal. And it is inexcusable for you to go there and be like, oh, I didn't know there was a cemetery across the road.
For sure.
It was right there. But you can dive deeper. They don't leave a link to like the crime mapping and the flood mapping and the zoning of the area. And these are all tools that are also available to you. If you want to do this like a pro, call it, like this is how we do it, and these are all things that we cover off on. Obviously, there's some paid tools that we use to make this a little bit faster, but there is tools out there which are free for everyone to use to check flood mapping to check the zoning of the area, which is important.
For sure.
If you're looking at a property that is zoned for potential townhouse development, don't be surprised if all your neighbours eventually become townhouses, which then the flow-on effect from that is, street parking. All of a sudden you can end up on a street where the community page is blowing up every week about, cars blocking the entire street.
Somebody not knowing how to park.
Yeah, exactly. Ed mapping, town planning. There might be works that are planned already for the area. Again, they're not putting the link to these websites on the REA ad, but they are out there.
Yep.
And certainly, I might even put something in the show notes about these different links that you can jump onto and have a look to sort of what's beyond what you're seeing on real estate.
Yeah, I think also there's future discussions about town plans as well. Like every area that was once the old Res A, which is now low density residential, is slowly moving towards Res B, like LMR, and that's a 3-story townhouse or something like that. And then again, the closer you get to a main road, or the closer you get to not stealing anyone's light, to come back to that, because that's really important in development. It's like you can't build a high rise there because you're going to literally shade all of these people. We'll never let you do that. But if you've got a position where you block the north to a forest or a freeway, then there's every chance you're probably going to go 5 stories, maybe even 10 stories. You look at what's happened in Stones Corner over the last 10 years. It's urban development rather than urban sprawl. And that is the way in which a city becomes more available and useful to its community, right? Is you just don't have houses and cars everywhere. You have genuine communities built around a high density of people who actually want to live in that, have those 15-minute communities and things like that. So my view on you do look at the town plan, look at what it is now, but then look at what's happening around it too. How many childcare centres, how many schools are there? How close are you to arterial roads? How close are you to a McDonald's? That genuinely affects the planning. If like you're buying really close to McDonald's, there's a really high chance you're going to have big units near you pretty soon.
McDonald's tracker.
Yeah, for sure.
That's got to be one of the websites.
Yeah, should be.
Yeah. I mean, I think the overarching theme of this episode is that you've sort of got to fall in love, or at least tick the boxes of the stuff that you can't see before you then go and fall in love with the marketing photos.
Yep.
Because they do tell you a story, and it is nice to sort of see a house in its best light. And then, once you've sort of gone through the checklist, assessed whether this is actually worth your time, make the calls to the agent, ask the questions, you're getting there on the weekend, and then you get to actually feel that space. Walk the street in real time, as opposed to the Google images from 3 years prior. And that's just a really rock solid process, so that you are not left with any surprises, or you're not left chasing the surprises after something does feel right.
I think you're also building value in that place. So you're walking into that house, and it's the reality of that property is the last box to tick. And if everything else checks out, then it becomes, and then the property checks out itself, it becomes a hell of a lot easier to reconcile paying what will feel like big money for that. And right now, I think we say this every week, and there's no apologies for repeating, because I think it's really important. Like, if you're buying property, you are paying good money for that. It feels like you're paying too much. If you're buying less than that, then there's probably some concerns with that property that other buyers were not willing to look past. And that's okay as well, as long as you understand what you're going to. We went to an auction in East Brisbane on the weekend, and this house, really good position, sort of, you'd call it like A- East Brisbane rather than like absolute prime East Brisbane. Nice easterly aspect, no flooding.
Told you he loves light.
Yeah, which is big for East Brisbane, particularly in this pocket. But the house that was existing there has character protection. You can't just bulldoze it over. The house itself is 10.5 of the 11-metre frontage. So if you are going to raise this thing, knock down underneath, build new, you are building under and out from this house rather than around it. So I said, like, it sold for 1.320, which was 20 grand above what we probably thought it would go for. And that's, I think, a really good price for that property, but also a really fair price. But my comment to our old client as we were walking out, and the guy that we knew who was bidding there as well, was, I hope they've got $1 million on top of that, because it's a pretty lumpy build. And again, they'd reconciled. I'm hoping that they reconciled with what a build actually costs. I hope they had somebody out there who's going to do the work, right? Because a good house built in Brisbane today costs about $3,000 a 1 square metre, which is pretty bloody expensive. And, you know, 1 million, $1 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 with those constraints, maybe is another $1,000 per square meter
Wow.
on top of that because of, the street's so narrow, you'd have to get council approval to get an excavator in there and probably block that street off for a couple of days. That's lumpy. So just all these little added costs come up to it, and you've got to ask yourself and ask the agent those questions and get the answers that you're comfortable with or uncomfortable with before you're going to auctions and making decisions. And it all starts with flood mapping, crime mapping, zoning, understanding what you can do, getting a builder's quote, whatever it might be, speaking to the agent, talking to people that are experts in whatever it is that you feel you may want to do to that property, so that you have a better picture than everybody else. Because then when it does go to auction and you are bidding, you're comfortable paying more than everybody else because you know that you can tick all the rest of the boxes.
Yeah, because the surprise. There are no surprises.
Yeah,
You've
sure.
recognized the challenges, you've reconciled with those challenges and planned accordingly. And there you are, still confidently holding your paddle.
For sure.
Offering in accordance with those challenges.
And then you get the house. And if you've done all that, it's the win, right?
100%. The house is the win. He's Sam. I'm Chase. Cue the song.